The Dating Contract by Miwakarai on Archive of Our Own. Chapter 8. Falling for You. Adrien slowly felt himself waking up. He brought his hand up and rubbed his eyes. Something smells nice, he thought to himself as he tried to go back to sleep, burying his nose in the scent. Wait! He opened his eyes again and sat up to see the top of Marinette's head. Her soft blue-black hair shone nicely in the moonlight. He looked down to see that he had his arms wrapped around her. Meanwhile, her face was buried into his chest, opposite of how they had fallen asleep, with him being the little spoon. Oh, wait, what time is it? Adrien whispered out loud and looked down for his staff only to see that he had been transformed back to his original self, with no phone since he had handed it to Natalie yesterday. He smiled sadly and stroked Marinette's hair. This may be the only time I can lay here with you. It's Adrien. You're over him, aren't you? He whispered to her softly. Wait, Natalie, father. He quickly reached over slowly for Marinette's phone to check the time. 4:48 a.m. I can make it back if I leave now. Plag, where are you? He hissed, hoping not to wake up Marinette. Plag? He whispered again, trying to make out his Kwame in the dark. Huh? Cat Noir? Marinette yawned and rubbed her eyes, trying to make out his figure in the moonlight, as she pulled her face away from his warmth of his chest. No, Marinette. Don't look. I de-transformed in my sleep. Adrien quickly brought his hands up to care for Marinette's eyes. Oh, sorry. I'll keep them closed. Marinette moved her hands to cover her face. I just have to find Plag, Adrien muttered, as he untangled his legs from Marinette's and patted down on the sheets. No, what if he finds Tiki? Marinette panicked. Just call him out. He'll go right into your ring, right? She suggested. I see him. Adrien spotted Plag sleeping soundly at the end of the bed. I'll see you later, princess. Adrien smiled at Marinette, who held her hands over her eyes tightly. This may be the one and only time we can talk together like this. As Adrien, he thought again. Adrien placed his hands over Marinette's hands and pulled them away from her face. What are you doing? Marinette asked. She kept her eyes closed tightly as he brought her hands to his shoulders and leaned in for a hug. Go back to sleep, my perfect princess. Adrien laughed before placing a kiss on her nose. They hugged silently for a few seconds. Marinette giggled in return and pushed him away playfully. Go, I'll be tempted to open my eyes. Plag, claws out, Adrien whispered and promised himself to let Plag eat all the cheese he wanted at school today. Thanks for letting me spend the night, princess, he whispered and softly kissed Marinette's forehead, pulling her blanket up to tuck her in before creeping out the balcony. He closed the door behind himself and quickly made his way back home. Marinette smiled and waited a minute before opening her eyes. Get home safe, kitty, she whispered softly before falling back asleep. Meanwhile, Cat Noir jumped in through the window of his room and landed swiftly on the floor. Plag, claws in, he whispered and kicked his shoes off and made his way to his bed to discard the fake body he had made of pillows before he left. As soon as he was done, he heard his alarm begin to beep. He looked up at the red glow and read 5 a.m. Right on cue, he heard a knock at the door and turned to see Natalie at the entrance with his breakfast. He turned and waved shyly. Still did not know how he felt about the fight that she stopped last night. Natalie smiled and handed him a tray of food before pushing him back into his room. She stepped aside with him and closed the door behind them. I discussed your behavior with your father last night over dinner. He agreed to let you continue attending your classes at the local high school. But please, Adrien. Adrien could hear the despair in her voice. I know things are hard for you. You just want to be a normal teenager. But it's getting so hard to cover for you all the time. Just promise me you'll stay safe, okay? She whispered and ruffled his hair. She sighed and shook her head at him before turning around to open the door again. I will. Thank you, Natalie. Adrien lied and smiled at her as she exited the room. Plag? Adrien put the food down and reached into his shirt to bring out his Kwame, who had fallen asleep again after de-transforming. I'm so sorry. You must be exhausted. Adrien nudged his Kwame awake. After keeping you out so I could be Cat Noir all night, you must have de-transformed me since you were so tired. And I didn't even give you anything to eat before I called you out again to make it back home. He continued as Plague began to wake up and rolled his way out of the cheese and bread on the platter. I'm fine, actually. Just lazy, as all. No need to worry about me, Plague muttered, and shoved a slice of bread into his mouth as he watched Adrien begin to get ready for school. Tiki gave me food, he said, through his chewing. Huh? Something about food? Adrien called from the bathroom as he quickly brushed his teeth. I said, I helped myself to Marinette's food in the fridge. Plague smacked his head with his hand, annoyed at himself for almost spilling Marinette's secret. I guess I can't be too mad at you for that. I'm glad you're okay. I'll have to make it up to Marinette later today, he smiled, as he walked out of the bathroom and over to Plague, who had left nothing but a decorative flower on the food tray. As the alarm beeped at 6:30 in Marinette's room, she reached her hand over to feel an empty spot next to her. Oh, I knew it. It must have been a dream, she muttered to herself and got down from the bed to turn off her alarm. She did a double take at the empty plate with crumbs and the empty glass of milk in her desk. Tiki, it wasn't a dream? Marinette turned around to ask Tiki, who was still stretching on the bed. Nope. Remember, Cat Noir woke you up to look for Plague? He de-transformed around 3 in the morning because Plague was too tired, so I brought him down to the fridge so he could eat. I hope you don't mind, Tiki explained. No, not at all. Thank you for taking care of Plague. I know he won't say anything up to Cat Noir after seeing you. She smiled and imagined what it would be like if he knew who she really was. Wait, if you mean de-transformed, that means that I was sleeping with an actual boy? A boy was in my bed? We were sleeping together? Oh my gosh, what if my parents had to come in? Marinette shouted and crouched on the floor, feeling her face burning up. I'm so embarrassed. She covered her face with her hands, trying to shake the thoughts out of her head. We woke up, wrapped in each other's arms. My legs were practically locked into his. Tiki, why does it feel so weird to think that actually happened? Marinette continued to shout. It's not like you haven't laid to watch the stars with Cat Noir before, and Ladybug even. Why does it matter that you have to do it as Marinette? Tiki asked, rolling her eyes and hoping that this time Marinette would admit her feelings for him. Do you think I should check up on him? Marinette uncovered her face and looked up at Tiki. Maybe it'd be better to give him some space. Wait for him to call you instead, Tiki suggested, knowing they'd be seeing each other at school in less than an hour. You're right, Tiki. I'll just go to school for now. Marinette jumped up from the floor and began to get dressed. Upon arriving, Marinette stood outside the classroom. She looked down at the black phone and wondered again if she should call him. Suddenly, her thoughts were interrupted as she heard someone call her name. Marinette, I'm so happy to see you. She turned around at the familiar voice and found herself wrapped in Adrien's embrace. Confused, she hugged him back, patting his back. Oh, sorry, I don't know why I suddenly did that. Adrien pulled away and looked down at the floor, unable to look Marinette in the eyes after literally waking up to her that morning. He felt his ears burning. It's okay. Sometimes all you need is a hug from a friend to start the day off. Marinette smiled and patted his shoulder. Thanks, Marinette. You always know what to say. Adrien looked up at her and softly smiled. Why are you standing out here? Adrien glanced at the watch on his wrist and noticed that they were a few minutes away from being considered late. Oh, I was going to call someone. Like a good morning call, you know? She smiled and quickly shoved her phone into her bag so he wouldn't see it. Oh, well, come on, or we'll be late. Adrien grabbed her hand and quickly pushed open the door to the classroom. Alia and Nino exchanged looks as they saw their best friends walk into the class holding hands again. Alia quickly snatched Marinette and sat down in their seats. Girl, I think you were right. After realizing you're taking, it seems like Adrien's falling for you. Alia whispered into Marinette's ear. What are you talking about? He was just being a nice friend. Marinette laughed at the idea. What has gotten into you? How could you get over Adrien so quickly? I get that you have cat noir right now, but how could you love someone you don't even know? Alia's eyes widened as the thought occurred to her. Marinette, do you know Cat Noir's secret identity? She whispered loudly in Marinette's ear. What? No, of course not. There's such a vital piece of information I could never ask him to share something so personal like that with me. Marinette tried to get Alia to stop thinking about the idea. Really? Well, then, how could you love someone you don't even know? What's his first name? Did he at least tell you that? Alia refused to let go of the idea. Give me a break, Alia. You don't know him like I do. Marinette rolled her eyes and opened her notebook, brushing Alia off. Meanwhile, Nino was busy interrogating his own best friend. Dude, you're crushing hard, Nino whispered to Adrien. Yeah. Adrien smiled and stared off dreamily. You didn't hear this from me, but I think Marinette likes you too, Nino assured him, hoping to push Adrien in the right direction. Well, actually, she used to like you, but I think now she's dating Cat Noir, after that huge stunt he pulled the other day at school. You were there, right? You saw how happy they looked. How come you like her now? Nino asked. I don't know. I'm dumb. Nino. How come I didn't notice Marinette's feelings before? He smacked himself on the forehead. If I had just started dating her as Adrien, I wouldn't have to lie so often. She wouldn't keep pulling away when I held her hand. I could hug her every day, Adrien thought to himself. I don't know, dude, but don't go and try to make a move on her now. Cat Noir is kind of a badass, and if he finds out that you're hitting on his girl, he might try to knock you out, Nina warned him. Yeah, whatever. I could totally take him. Adrien laughed at the thought of fighting himself to win the heart of the girl he was already dating. Cat Noir whistled happily as his patrol with Ladybug came to an end. Nothing again today. I feel like Hawkmoth has been too quiet lately. You think he's planning something big? Ladybug sat down at the ledge of the roof. Maybe, but at least we get somewhat of a small vacation before his big return, Cat Noir laughed as he sat down next to her. Hey, something's been on my mind that I've been meaning to talk to you about. He kicked his feet back and forth as they dangled above the street. Sure, I'm all ears, kitty. Ladybug turned her attention to the city lights in front of him. Well, I have a friend that I really trust, and I'm thinking of telling them my secret identity. What? I don't think that's a good idea at all. How can you be sure this person isn't working for Hawkmoth? I'm sure of it. I trust my friend completely, and I know they trust me too. Why do you want to share your secret identity so badly with someone anyway? Ladybug asked. Well, my first choice would be to tell you, naturally, but since you're against the idea, I figured I respect that and find someone else to tell. Cat Noir tried to defend his idea. It's hard being a superhero. It's hard having a balance of both civilian life and a superhero life. I just want someone to talk to without having to lie out to them all the time. It gets me into all such a trouble, and if I could just be honest, he continued before Ladybug cut him off. Cat Noir, I know, believe me, I know more than anyone how you feel, but just think of how much harder your life will get when you have someone who knows your secret. Now that person is tied to you forever, constantly putting them at risk. Is that what you want? The friend I'm thinking of telling can defend themselves. I know they can. Cat Noir continued to back his argument. If Ladybug can't talk you out of this idea, maybe Marinette can, Ladybug thought to herself. Maybe you should talk to Marinette about this before doing anything. You know, just to get a second opinion on this big decision, Ladybug suggested. Great idea. I'll go see her later tonight. He smiled at the idea and waved at Ladybug before taking off. Ladybug sighed as she watched him take off. She turned in the direction of her house and threw her yo-yo out, pausing to think about what he had just told her. Maybe I'll send Tiki to talk to Plag so he can advise him against the idea, she muttered before taking off into the sky.